Hi, BookTube, and welcome to the inaugural Heinlein 2025 episode that we will be talking about Red Planet. And I have with me here Randy Ray, the literate Texan, Pat at Book
Hi,
Chat,
everybody.
Mark and Mark Richardson, and Scott at Scott Danielson.
Yeah, Red Planet. Cool.
So I guess sorry, we didn't actually discuss this before we came on, but I guess Scott knows we'll maybe do it like we do the Simac one where we give a sort of a spoiler free to begin with outline of the story, and then we go into, because you can't do anything without spoilers.
Mm-hmm.
So who would like to give a thumbnail sort of overview?
How about Mark?
Mark, yeah.
Hey, that was nice.
Go, Mark, go.
Top spin it right to Mark.
Yeah, but there's nothing I can do about it. Everybody's so far away. So what am I going to say, right? So basically, Mars is sort of I guess you call a Percival Lowell type planet. It's canals and desert. Seems like desert island, I guess you'd call it. And there's a colony, a human colony, but there are also Martians and creatures of various types, as you saw from our thumbnail. And the story's about two young boys, Jim and Frank, if I got the names right. Yeah, I think I do.
Yep.
Their families in the colonies. And the one of the background things is that the colonists move north and south depending on the time of year. So the winter is a big deal. And we just happen to join in when the boys are going to go to school. And the company, which runs the planet basically, also provides an education, but it's centrally located so the kids can't stay with their families. Jim has a young friend, Sphere. I always have a little trouble picturing until I saw the thumbnail. And they're friends, but you think of it some of the times when you're reading, you think of almost like a pet relationship. And that plays a role in the story. The little guy is Willis, and he's like a recorder. I mean, he's a mimic. Everything he hears, he even does the voices. So that can lead to embarrassment if you're not careful with conversation. And we have a little bit of that early on. And then later in the story, it plays a critical role as the boys go to school, a plot's uncovered, and they have to go on the run.
Mm-hmm.
And the colonists are in danger. So I don't know if I can go any more without spoilers, but
Yeah.
basically that's about it, I think.
Very good.
Yeah.
Well done.
Yeah, it's like basically is Heinlein's third juvenile, published in 1949. And did everybody like it? I guess is thing is I enjoyed it. I'm pretty sure I've read it before, but it didn't seem that familiar.
Yeah. That's cool. I'd actually never read this before. A lot of people kind of have a nostalgic view of this novel, right?
Yeah.
But I was thinking about that, and for me, I mean, the first science fiction novel I remember reading was actually a Arthur C. Clarke juvenile called Dolphin Island.
Yep.
And so when I was getting into science fiction as a kid, I didn't have like a mentor or anything. My parents weren't into it or anything like that. I was feeling my own way, and I largely missed Heinlein, meaning I didn't read a lot. I read some short stories and things, but I really, Asimov and Clarke were my intro to science fiction. So there's a lot of holes in what I've read of Heinlein. But the whole juvenile is interesting. And I'd be curious to know, who in this group had read it like when they were a kid? Mark did?
Yeah.
Yeah. Randy, you did not?
I didn't read this one as a kid, but one of my first science fiction novels that I ever read was a Heinlein juvenile called Have Spacesuit Will Travel.
Right.
Yeah.
Which I thought was just a terrific title. And even then, but that was one of my introductions to science fiction. And at the time, I didn't realize that Heinlein, had a separate Heinlein juveniles and Heinlein adult novels. But I read a lot of Robert Heinlein when I was growing up.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not this one though. This one got past me somehow.
Is this new for you, Pat?
So yes, this was very new to me. I'm very new to science fiction, actually, and I've been just trying to, in the last maybe 2 years, I've been trying to read classics in science fiction, and so I guess it was last summer. Ben over at Grammaticus Books had done a couple of videos on Heinlein, and I was talking to him, and he recommended that I start with the juveniles. And so I also read, Have Spacesuit Will Travel, and I read Rocket Ship Galileo. So that's my knowledge of Heinlein. So, I'm very, very new to, I'm new to the genre, and I'm new to Heinlein. So I thank all of you for allowing me to join you today.
Well, I love it. What do you think of him so far?
Well, I really liked this book a lot. I had a lot of fun with this. I found some of it jarring, because I don't really know Heinlein. I only know, what Grammaticus had told me about Heinlein. I was a little surprised, I think, by some of the talk, especially in the beginning, in the voice of Doc McCrae, because I don't know this world. But as I got further into the novel, and as I read the article that Sean sent us about, what this novel has been through, and the edits that he was required to make, and what a sanitized version of the novel came out originally, I found myself sort of cheering for Heinlein, and I felt really bad for what happened to him with Alice Dalglish at Scribner. She totally altered his book. So I was glad that we got to read what he really intended us to read.
Yeah,
we'll say hi to Steve. Steve Donahue.
Yeah,
anyway,
Steve.
Sorry, go ahead. Yep.
Yay, Steve.
Put it up there.
Hi, Steve.
And also Alex Days here.
Hello, Alex.
Hi, Alex.
Hey, Alex.
Yeah, we'll get into the differences because it was heavily edited, and it was the original version. I have the British version here, and we'll go through some of the things that were changed. And then it wasn't until 1980 something that the original manuscript was put back to the original. I think, Scott, you've got the original edition, I think, of it.
Yeah, this paperback was so I ordered this once I knew we were going to read it. It's looks like 1977, but the thing I noticed on it was this little thing here that says the entire uncut novel. And then I threw that out to the group and I said, what does that mean? And the next thing you know, Sean and Mark both have been digging, found all kinds of information on what that meant actually.
Right.
Yeah, big part of it is Mark has this as well, Grumbles from the Grave, and it's got letters from Heinlein to his agent, and one longer one to which is kind of interesting to Dalglish, but he's always grumbling about Dalglish to his agent. So, but we'll get to that in a few minutes. I guess we can start sort of jumping into the things that are interesting, because we start out with Jim and his family, and he's gonna go. I kept calling it college, but it's actually a high school. Right. It's not college yet. He's just going to high school. So he's what, 13, 14 years old, 15 maybe at the most.
Yeah,
that would have been my guess. Yeah, that he was 13 or 14.
Yeah.
I'm going to point something out too for the benefit of Pat. The rest of you guys probably already know this, but almost invariably in a Robert Heinlein novel, there's a character who's basically Robert Heinlein. And Doc McRae is Robert Heinlein in this book. You know, he's generally this grumpy old man who's smarter than everybody else, or you know, so Heinlein would like you to believe. So I'm sure the rest of y'all are already aware of that, but since, you know, Pat's kind of new to Heinlein, I just want to point that out. That's one of my favorite things about the books is to figure out, and you can tell almost immediately who the Heinlein stand-in is.
Right.
So yeah, because he's there at the sort of scene at the beginning too, because we find out Willis is an alien, or well, he's not an alien on that planet. The humans are aliens, but he saved him from something called the Water Seeker, which is something that they try to kill all the time, and it's we find out immediately that Jim, at 13, 14 years old, has a gun, and he carries around a gun with him, a laser gun by the sounds of it. And the thing that in the original version that we all read was that he comes in, puts his gun down, and then his little baby brother picks it up, and the sister says, you know, you should take charge out of it and all this. And then then the discussion starts of him saying to his sister, well, you know, she wants to use it. Oh, you're just a girl, you don't know how to do this. And then they start getting into mentioning briefly that because Jim has a license to carry the gun, that she can get licensed as well. And then McRae pops in and starts using the, you know, thing of saying that it's almost unconstitutional to have a license and all this, and you should just go ahead and carry it without it. And this was the very first thing that got the blue pencil by Dalgliesh, because she didn't want the idea that to go against authority, I guess, for having a gun. So therefore, he had to change all that and get rid of McRae's rebuttal against it. So it really toned it down. And this was something that,
don't you know, that pissed him off.
Yeah, well, it did, because he, and this is the one thing, because a lot of people read into him into his stories, and he says to her, he says, sometimes, you know, you basically can't do this, or something that he has to, for monetary reasons, have to put things in that he doesn't agree with. So this was one thing that really, I guess, according to the letter, really irked him. And I have a few other things here with people writing about Heinlein. This is a newer one, A Pleasant Profession by Robert A. Heinlein, Farah Mendelssohn. And she talks about saying that because of this situation, you can't always read Heinlein into a story, because he is writing for money at times, so therefore he has to change his ideas.
Sure.
Which is an interesting thing.
Right.
So yeah, there's he's got another grumpy old
Steve.
That's awesome.
That's great.
Yeah. So was he genuinely upset, or I thought initially we thought he did it and didn't have a problem with it, and he said, let's do that.
Well, well, Mark, as you've read the letters too, did you want to chime in here?
Yeah. So the first impression I had with reading a few things about it, and then Grumbles of the Grave, and I went back and I had a conversation with Sean, and went back. I think he was upset as much about the interference as he was about the philosophy. So he was not happy.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and I don't think he liked her very much.
No.
The whole idea behind this was that so that it could be in libraries, school libraries. Is that?
Yeah, they had Scribners and most big publishers. Back then, in my lovely profession, I guess we were the censors, because we would get hired just like sensitivity readers do now. It's the same kind of business going on. It's just somebody else doing it. So for you to sell to the schools, so public libraries, obviously, but the public school system has a huge library system. So that's a lot of money for these publishers.
Sure.
And they were going to, they put a filter on in fast You know, he could have published it as an adult novel and then nobody would have cared. But
Right.
for kids, that wasn't going to work. So they don't do it quite that way anymore. But
I think I read somewhere, I don't know if it was in the article. I think it was in the article that you sent us, Sean, where I guess Heinlein said to Dalglish, I feel as though I should put your name on the book as well, you know, that we are co-authors, because, you know, she really rewrote the book. I mean, and took so much out.
Yeah, because the in the letters, like one of the first letters they in Grumbles from the Grave to his agent, he basically says, "I'm done. You know, we're not doing this. I'm done. I can't deal with her anymore." And then it's slowly that he is doing the edits and everything, and he does grumble about this. And the idea that he suggested that she should do it is from Virginia Heinlein, but they've got no sort of record. She thinks it could have been a telephone conversation, but that's the idea. He just saying, she should take as much of the blame as him. Like that's his idea, not the goodness of it, but the blame of destroying, he thinks, the story, because we'll get into other things too. Like, it's not just the gun issue that she had with was words like darn, stinker, and other colloquialisms. She just didn't like this. But again, too, he gave her credit by saying that, he realizes that it's partially her, but it's also the librarian, because they have this almost checklist that she's the gatekeeper for them. She's got to make sure that the manuscript lives up to this, because then he signs a contract saying that there's no moral or issues for young people and stuff like this. So she's got to make sure it's okay.
And it was a multi-book contract.
Yes.
I mean, you think about his bank account. This was an important business thing for him, And if you shut off the flood before you even got the work done, he was going to lose a lot of money.
Yeah, because they got, according to the letters, he wanted, when he first said, "I'm done," was that she contracted for this, so I should still get my £500 or dollars.
About,
I should get my $500 from this. And I've been here too long that as soon as I save money, I'm thinking about. But yeah, so anyway, that's the first thing that we get immediately. So, and we as the story progresses, anybody wants to jump in here too as well, but he goes to the main dome, I guess it is, for the high school. But on the way, they have to stop, and I think wait until the ice of the canal froze so they could go, because this whole setting is Heinlein used, as Mark said, Percival Lowell's sort of map, and apparently on the end papers, a map, Percival Lowell's map was printed on the end papers of the first.
Oh, I'd like to have seen that.
Yeah, that's cool. So it started fairly slow for me, I would say.
Yeah.
There was I don't know, the first probably 50, 60 pages were like setting up the world, and this is how they live, their day-to-day lives, conversations like the gun one that you had, and then it really took off once they went to school and things happened there, and then it became just like a chase. Like an adventure novel that zoomed. It was definitely fun.
The outdoor scenes were unbelievably good.
I agree.
Yeah. And aliens are fairly rare for Heinlein, aren't they? I mean, from the short fiction I've read. I mean, they're not unheard of, but
right.
And is this the same world as Stranger in a Strange
Land? Because that's the aliens are the Martians in Strange Land that teaches the main character. But here's something like that. Alexei Panshin, who a lot of people may know for his
Rite of Passage.
Rite of Passage, yes, thank you, and the history of science fiction beyond the
World Beyond the Hill or something like that.
But this was an early study of Heinlein stuff, and Heinlein freaked at this. I've got to read it in total after I get more into Heinlein. But I like what he says here. He says, because he's talking about, well, I'll just read the whole paragraph because it's quite interesting. The backgrounds of Heinlein's earlier Scribner's books were conventional ones: middle-class boys off to a toot to the moon, and a boy passing through a military academy. And that's rocket ship Galileo and Space Cadet. And then it says, in the case of Red Planet, however, I think Heinlein started from an entirely different angle. First, he worked out social, economic, and physical conditions, and then planned the story that might arise for them. In many ways, this is the most effective way of writing a science fiction story. Backgrounds are always more difficult to invent than plots. Once worked out, any detailed background can provide room for a number of plots, characters, and situations that are completely independent of each other, and any story that is set against such a detailed background automatically has a solid base. On the other hand, stories which backgrounds are constructed to suit the plot, vagaries often seem makeshift and hollow. So I thought that was quite interesting.
Yeah.
So that's why I think the setting is so good.
Yeah.
And
I mean, I've read so many
I've got a
definitions.
timeline question.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah. So was Stranger in a Strange Land set before or after Red Planet? I would think it was before.
I think it's before. Yes, it's
Well,
set before. Yeah, and it's not really. I don't know if it's exactly in the same world. Nobody's really touched on it yet. Excuse me, of what I've read, but it seems like the Martians are the same Martians,
right.
or he had that percolating because Virginia Heinlein starts talking about him doing another story, and she gave him some ideas, and he wrote up this like 8-page outline, which actually became Stranger in a Strange Planet while he was going through all this, I think, and then it just got put aside for quite a while.
Now, isn't there another Mars novel from Heinlein too? Podkayne of Mars?
Yes, we'll be reading that one, I think, at some point this year. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'll be interested to see where that fits into the timeline too.
Hopefully,
So,
he doesn't use the word
on his way. So Jim on his way and Frank on his way to the high school, they walk off and with Willis, and they go into a Martian city, and they meet the Martians, and they usually don't interact with people, and they're very interesting. They're very strange. We get this sort of tantalizing look at them. And they stay there for a little while, and he sees things like a replay of everything that Willis was with, and while he's been with Willis, and that's why they sort of were helping him, or they helped them a little bit, gave him some water, and then they go back, and we're just sort of left hanging of what the aliens are, what the Martians are like. And I thought that was really cool, and we do find out more as it goes on. But then there's not a whole lot happens from there until they get to the high school, and there's a new headmaster who's a martinet, and he's just a vile person and wants to control everything, of them, and they've got to give up their guns.
Their guns and their pets.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
And then he says, well, he's not a pet.
Yeah. Right.
That's right. He's a friend.
Yeah.
But then you can't have
well, we're in spoiler territory now, right?
Oh yeah, very much.
So, of course, at the end we learn that Willis is what a young Martian looks like, and I was convinced that it was going to be something like that, but I thought we were going to find out that Willis was one of the young water seekers.
Oh,
the monstrous things.
That would have been great.
That's where I thought it was going, right up until the page where we learned that he was a young Martian. I was like, oh, I was close.
You got a book there.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
But they or does anybody want to take over, or do you want me to continue?
No, keep going.
Oh, please continue. Yeah.
Sorry.
and then they confiscate. The headmaster confiscates Mark and confiscates Mark. Willis. What you talking about, Willis? That'll date everybody here.
Yeah.
But yeah, so they confiscate them, and they're sort of doing experiments because they want to send them back to Earth. They want to sell them to the London Zoo because they're called bouncers or roundheads. They don't see too many of these creatures on Mars, so they're going to do this, and Jim wants it, and Jim's a hothead. Like immediate, like you show that he didn't think about getting the taking the charge out of the gun, so his little brother didn't pick it up, and also too, that was the other one of the changes that Dalglish says, that becoming licensed, there's a code and there's a thing they've got to learn and all this kind of stuff about using guns and all this stuff so they can do all this. But Jim, even though he's got this license, he's still a hothead, and as soon as he just wants to shoot and kill and burn the headmaster. And
I was with him on that.
Yeah. But I think this is part of Heinlein's idea of showing Jim, because
and a lot of Heinlein deals with this like authoritarianism stuff, right? He's definitely shoves against that all the time in the fiction.
But also too, it shows part of the plot and the story, because he is a hothead to do this, and it's Frank that says no, well, let's not do this. But then they decide to break Willis out, and then they're gonna run off. They figure they're gonna leave, but they wind up doing that. But Willis overheard a story of them saying that because there's a migration that happens from the south to the north when it gets winter because it's too cold, and they're going to not do that because it costs too much. It's the company, and there's this general or the person in charge there. He's in on this too, but then Willis sort of burns away through the wall and gets out. They escape through the garbage chute because all the entrances and exits are watched. So they get through the garbage chute, and they're going to walk back, which is treacherous because it's nighttime, or there's going to be night, and the temperature is going down. So they do run into trouble. Frank didn't fill up his water supply, so he's breathing colder and drier Martian air, so he gets a sickness that is there, like a Martian throat, I think it's called.
Yeah.
But then they're at nighttime, and they're going to die from the cold. And Willis tells them, come in here, and it's what they call a cabbage, and it just closes up around them, and they think they're going to die. But as it turns out, he turns on the flashlight, and it creates photosynthesis and oxygen for them for overnight. And that's another thing in the letters, because it's called heliotropius. Is that it? But he says she wouldn't know what it was, if it ran into her, basically. And she didn't like that aspect either. And there's so much stuff about that he went on and on that she had no idea what science fiction was. Because the good part is, Mark, tell her about when they suggested, when she said, or she asked him who the cover artist should be.
So he picked somebody who had done, I believe it was an Astounding cover, and she had no use for science fiction. And she sent him back a reply refusing the guy because he worked for cheap magazines. And it's an example. She sent him a tear sheet of a really terrible story by a guy named Anson McDonald, who is Robert Heinlein. So,
that's great. That's priceless.
Yeah, she really did not like science fiction. She was one of the people who put science fiction in what we used to call the science fiction ghetto, right?
Wow.
They locked it off. You try to go to the slicks like Heinlein did, and other people were starting to at the time. I think Sean mentioned the other day, Ray Bradbury. It was not always easy if you would publish in one place to move to the next. So
yeah.
Yeah, that was the cover, and that
Oh, is that it?
yeah,
Okay.
that's the cover from the one that was sent, and where by his bootstraps is the story, which we'll be reading next month in the Menace from Mars. No, sorry, the Menace from Earth.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, yeah. So that's where she thought he was a horrible artist.
That's crazy. Yeah, I love it. And I liked, during the chasing and everything, they skated on the canals.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That was good stuff.
that was.
Yeah.
That reminds me of form skating,
Yeah.
where you never leave your skate never leaves, and the judge comes out and looks at the ice, and they know everything you've done.
Right.
That's how they were tracking the boys.
I was reminded of, remember Niall's saga? Skating on the river.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Love it. Of course, an axe came out in that one. Yeah.
You know, I bet Red Planet was a novel that George Lucas would probably have loved. And I did get sort of a Star Wars feel to it because, I don't know if anybody remembers BB-8, the little droid from the newer Star Wars movies, but he was a perfect sphere too. But, just playing up that cutesy element for the kids, was what I noticed about it was, this was obviously meant to be a lot of fun for a 12 or 13-year-old to read.
Right.
And it was a lot of fun. It made me feel like a kid again. I enjoyed reading it.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, well I think it's a really great teenage boys book. It's like I would, if I read it at the time, I'm sure I would have loved it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I read it so long ago that it took me a week to realize I had read it before.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I have, but there was only most of it I didn't actually remember, but then there were a few scenes.
Right.
That started niggling in my mind. But I didn't read it when I was a teenager. That was the thing. I read it much later. So, but yeah, it to continue. Basically, they are in trouble. Like basically, while they're walking back, and Willis sort of contacts, or I think it's him that contacts the Martians again, and the Martians take him in. And because they're sort of friends now, they're water friends with one Gecko, I think that's the pronunciation. Mm-hmm. And they actually help and cure Frank of his sort of Martian throat. And they spend the night in this one place with, I guess, I'm not sure, like furs or something that's around. And there's these spheroids that are in this little hollow that's beside Jim. And Frank says, well, what is it? They look like eggs. And this created a huge controversy, because then it means that Willis is a she.
Right.
It's female. But then one of the readings that I was doing, somebody pointed out, was saying that the possibility, I think she stretches it a little too far, but she says that it was only Frank that said that they were eggs.
Mm.
And that this could be a way of Heinlein slipping in a wet dream.
Oh.
Oh my gosh.
Oh, I didn't get that at all.
Yeah, I'm not.
Somebody stretching that. Yeah.
I had to point it out because it's like, well, okay. But yeah, so the Martians come in and take these spheroids and take them away. And Willis is going, oh, I don't know, it's nothing to do with me, and sort of walks away.
Mm. Wow.
So and yeah, and then they actually get help, and then they that's where we learn a little more about Martians sort of society, that there's the adults, but then there's stages, because he meets another old Martian that is probably a ghost, is dead. So they move on to another plane as well to help the living, the living Martians. They're the elders of the race. And then we get back to the colony. They help him. They help Frank and Jim and Willis to get back to the colony, and they tell, but they find out that there's an all points bulletin for them, that they're being looked for, and the head of the colony is coming to arrest them, and his father, first of all, is quite angry at him, and and then we got another authority figure here, but at least he listens to him, and then Willis tells, because Willis recorded this whole conversation between the headmaster and the head of the colony, and saying that not only give up or sell Willis to London Zoo, that they are going to stop the migration. So because it's been stalled already, and that was the thing, they were going to keep stalling until sorry, it's too late, and try that old chestnut. But then they decide to leave immediately, and then it ratchets up the action and the problems that they have along the way, because there's no they want to make sure they get there so they can go by boat through the canals, and then but there's no boats that are available, and then it starts really with head on between Mark's father and the colonist, the migration colonists, with the authorities, and then they finally do get to the, and they figure, okay, we'll go to the school, and because it's a place warm, indoors, they can, and everybody can have a bed as well. So they get there, but then they find out that they were expected, because the head of the small part of the colony had run off and tattletaled to them, and they're sort of they're prisoners there, because they're with, there's a few people out there with guns that are making sure that they don't leave, and several people start getting killed that they want to surrender and leave, and they get burned down, and that's another thing that one of the, and I think this could be a little thing that is interesting, because even so, everybody is armed, because they mentioned that there's over 100 colonists there that are armed. They can't do anything against two people with guns, because they're stuck inside, and like it's one thing that is an interesting contrast to, or it could be Heinlein's way of saying that sometimes, having guns, it's not just having guns, it's being in the right position. So it's multifaceted, like he's multifaceted, rather than just saying the guns are good. He's saying that in this case, and they may not be that beneficial, because if two people can hold back hundreds, there's a problem there. But that's
Jim's dad was inept, right? Jim's father was inept.
Yeah,
he wasn't a great leader.
He was a doofus.
Yeah, he was. And when the doc, who was totally capable and did realize they probably needed, to mount guard sentries and all this stuff, he refused to take responsibility. I don't want to be the leader. So, they were two very different characters.
Yeah.
I thought that was really odd too. At that point in the story, the protagonist up to this point has been Jim, but then at about this point in the story, Jim's dad becomes the protagonist.
Yeah, he gets sidelined.
And the protagonist until almost close to the very, very end.
Right.
Yeah, because he gets sidelined again. It's this fight against authority. Like Jim is still battling against authority, but with his father and the other colonists, because he's being sidelined because he is a kid still, even though he has a gun.
That's
a kid,
interesting.
This
and
is
a lot of juveniles in the YA books, I would say, they get rid of the parents quickly, because it's a problem in the story to have that authority around all the time while the kids are trying to act, right? So it's interesting here that the parents are brought right back into it after they escape the school and all that. So,
but it's also it combines good with Jim's view, or he talks to his sister. You're just a girl, You can't have a gun. And they're basically telling him that he's just a kid. He can't help.
Right.
So
Right.
it's again this thing of Mark and I were talking about like gender roles, that you think that there is just female male gender roles, but Heinlein turns that a bit on its head. It's like you were saying, it's subversive, Mark, in many ways.
I thought that's what made this a brilliant novel. You know, when we find out the truth about Willis, you know, and the whole egg laying scene, which I did not see the way you just described it before. I just that saved the whole novel for me. I looked at the whole. I went back and started reading it again. That just changed everything for me.
Well, is it like, you know, like if people want to say, is it the first transgender novel that's been done? Because well, it's like, this is the big spoiler, is that Willis grows up and changes sex. He changes his gender, or changes her gender to become a male Martian, because there's no female adult Martians.
Right.
It's a different society, and even the Dr. McCrae talks about that there's no, like, they've been wondering about sexual relations, and that's sort of what there is, because there isn't any.
Right.
And Willis doesn't care.
Yeah.
They're all running around being saved by Willis all the time.
Yeah.
And Willis could care less about what's bothering them, right? Other than if they're in danger, obviously, he cares about that.
And then I read, I think it was in the article, Sean, that you sent us, that whole episode with Willis and Willis's gender got cut out by.
Yeah, the last part, really, of saying that how he's going to go into hibernation, and it's going to be last like maybe a couple lifetimes, doesn't, or is it 70 years or something?
40 years.
Yeah. So he's going to be too old. Jim's going to be too old, but they don't tell Jim that. But you see, this is the whole thing, because that buildup of how he reacts to that is part of the story. Because as I said, he's a hothead all the way through, and even when he's at the when they're trapped there, he goes in the second wave that finally gets out to take over, like his father's in the first wave. And he goes in the second, but he wants to just rush out. And they realize that there's an automated gun system that's going to just burn anybody that goes out. So they have to figure out a way of getting around it. They do, and then he shoots at somebody. He almost kills a bad guy. And I bet that was a no-no for her as well. Even though Heinlein points out that in his previous stories, how many people the juveniles killed in that one, actually killed, not just wounded.
Yeah.
But she still didn't budge on that.
But she said that, well, the difference is they were in the military.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, that's true.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great.
Wow.
Great.
Hmm.
Interesting.
Yeah, this is maddening. It had to have driven Heinlein crazy.
Yeah. But you see, by taking out all this stuff that these things happen, that he's a hothead, and then it's like, what's the German word for, or is it growing up, a growing up novel? That's what it is.
Bildungsroman.
Right.
Yeah. That's what this story is. And without all that, you don't get him to change at the end, where he's told the story of Willis, that it's going to take a little while, and he's calm. He has grown up. He has grown up during this time, even though it's a very short period of time. He grew up during this, and by getting rid of all that stuff, it destroys that thing. So I guess that's why the ending had to be, because I don't see anything wrong with the ending. How could that? Okay, the guns, you can maybe understand somebody being offended by the guns and the shooting and possible sexual relations between Jim and Willis. Okay, you can maybe understand that, but the ending, no, there's nothing wrong with it.
Right.
Other than it just doesn't make sense if you've taken out everything else.
Exactly. Right.
And I assume this was really popular book at the time, wasn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, all of his juveniles were widely read, right?
Yeah.
That's what I thought. Just making sure. Yeah.
Yeah, and I thought it was paced well, and that's I think a lot of people had said about it, and that and from his previous juveniles, they were saying that they didn't work as well, the previous two.
Mm-hmm.
So
How many juveniles did he write total? Was it like 14?
Oh yeah, I'm not sure how many.
I'm looking at 1, 2, 3,
14 or 15? It was quite a few.
8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. Well,
13.
they're counting Starship Troopers in there, so I would say 12.
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Are we reading
Yeah,
any of
Starship
the other
Troopers.
juveniles? What other juveniles are we reading?
We're doing a rocket ship, Galileo. Have Spacesuit will travel.
That's going to be fun.
Yeah, that's a good. Yeah.
Is Podkayne of Mars a juvenile?
I don't know.
It's not on this list of 12.
No.
Okay.
And I don't think Door into Summer is.
No.
I think those might be the only ones. I think.
Citizen of the Galaxy is a really great one.
Is that a juvenile?
I believe it is a juvenile, but I don't know that it's on our list of things to read this year.
The Star Beast is one.
Oh, Star Beast is a juvenile. Okay.
Yeah.
I remember enjoying that. I didn't think it was. I didn't remember it as a juvenile.
And then
So we're actually doing quite a
Rocket
few
Ship
juveniles.
Galileo was his first one, and that's on here.
Yeah. I wanted to do the first one, and then like this one, I thought was a good one to jump rather than do Space Cadets. But I knew, I thought the only other one was the
Citizen of the Galaxy as well.
Yeah, but are we doing Citizen of the Galaxy? No.
Yeah, I have that on October.
Yeah.
Oh,
Okay.
okay.
So we're actually doing quite a few juveniles then.
So I'm showing Star Beast, Rocket Ship Galileo, Have Spacesuit Will Travel, and Citizen of the Galaxy. So 4 of the.
Oh, we are doing Citizen of the Galaxy. Fun.
Yeah. So actually,
That's one of my favorites. Pat, you're really going to love that one.
Yeah.
All right.
5 of the 12, including this one, is for juveniles. Yeah.
How many short story collections? Just next month?
Just the one. Yeah. The Menace from Earth next month.
Okay.
Yeah, and then like that was the idea. If we wanted to read a short story each, and maybe a different short story as well. We never really talked about it much in the group.
Yeah, I must have missed that memo, but I'm all for that.
Yeah, but then next month we don't need to if we're doing next month because they're all short stories. So don't really need to do an extra. And there is a mixture, I think, in there. There is some Anson McDonald stuff in, but he used 3 or 4 other pseudonyms, and I don't know if those are generally grouped with his short stories or not. They should be, but I don't know because I've got a list here. It's supposed to be all his short stories, and he seemed to only write like 60 some short stories.
Yeah.
I've never really thought of Heinlein as a short story writer, more as a novelist. You know, I think of Isaac Asimov and I think, oh yeah, look at all those short stories. But their output may have been very similar in that respect. I just don't know.
Yeah, and I guess I've come at Heinlein from the short story direction. So
so did I.
To me, he's like a short story writer that does novels.
Interesting.
Yeah,
because I've read several Heinlein novels, but like I said, there's a lot of holes for me in in what I have read. But I've read lots of short stories, and but yeah, they've got a collection. I think it's called Expanded Universe or something like that. And it's a pretty thick book, but I don't know if that's a complete collection of all the short stories, but it is pretty thick.
They actually split that
pages?
in 2. Yeah, they split it in 2. You can get in 2 volumes.
Okay,
or 1.
So it's a pretty big bunch of short stories. I don't know the number, but yeah, and some then famous ones too. Some big ones like we're gonna do By His Bootstraps. That's a landmark science fiction story right there.
Not according to Alice Dalgliesh, it isn't. That's cheap.
Oh man,
he really comes out as the villain in this story. I mean, she's awful.
Yeah. And she published in America. She published Wind in the Willows.
That's right. Yes.
Yep.
Yeah.
So she's got some redeeming character.
Okay,
we'll give her credit.
Give her that.
Well, in a long letter, at least Heinlein does. He's like in the letter anyway. Whether he thought in his mind, he actually did sort of understand how what she was doing and why she was doing it. It's just he didn't like it. And he also he gave a long description of how we think differently. And he's not trying to change your mind, but he's talking about the gun issue. And he said, "This is how I see it." And he gives examples. What is it, of the Sullivan
Act? Yeah.
Yeah. And which basically, I guess Mark, it'd be best if you tell this, or anybody else rather than me.
So the Sullivan Act was aimed at mobsters, right? I mean, we all remember the mafia movies and the gangsters of Chicago and New York and all that. And for much of the country, it didn't make much sense. And it was a gun restriction and licensing. But what ended up happening and made the news was that basically the regular citizens lost their guns, but the bad guys did not sign up. To Heinlein, that just proved that, you don't, he's very polite in the letter, saying, I have no intention of changing your mind, but I do want you to understand why and he used that as a prime example. So, but there are problems.
Then he says, when in France too, when the Nazis came
through, they went to town office and got the list.
Got the list and went and took the guns away. So that was his view of things, and he thought government basically shouldn't have the control over this kind of thing. And that comes out in the story, and that's why he has Doc McCrae so vehemently against. They push aside the licensing. He mentions it in the original manuscript as the one we read, but it's quickly pushed aside by Heinlein, as McCrae, and that was the thing, and that was one of the big things that really got him, I guess, in the end, because I was trying to reconcile that until I really read the letters, because the letters really put everything in context, and that article too. That it's what is it? Something blue pencil.
Yeah, that was great article.
Yeah,
I got that article you sent, but these letters that you're talking about, those are in Grumbles from the Grave.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. Yep.
Yeah.
Which has a great cover by Michael Whalen.
Yeah, look at that.
I want a painting of me like that.
Michael Whalen is selling. I think he's still alive, isn't he?
Yeah,
he is.
Yeah,
I'd probably get an owl. I'd probably get like a raven or something.
Yeah, commission him.
I was telling Mark I was looking for that book, and through used sellers, and I thought I had a copy of it, and I lost it, and then I just was able to order it, I think 2 days ago, through thrift books, and I had so many credits. I'm getting it for free. Actually.
Nice. Oh, wow.
Yeah. So
there you go.
Next week. So.
Yeah, it'll have a lot of the stories, I think, that we're reading references to.
Oh, that's great.
And just, I guess, because Mark and I read short stories, like Mark, you're partially through the Roads Must Roll, and I read the Situation. No, wait a minute. I keep forgetting the name of the one that I read. Oh, sorry. It was one of his Anson McDonald ones.
Was it Satisfaction?
Solution Unsatisfactory.
Solution Unsatisfactory, right?
Yeah, that was published in May of 1941. But we'll get to that in a minute. I just go through other things. Like I don't have this thing. It was fun doing this research because I like digging into the books that I have for research. For the Simac, there's nothing. There's two little books that are this thick put together, and a few articles. There's not much at all. But for Heinlein,
we're looking forward to you starting the Simac Society.
Right? I think so.
Yeah. Well, the Heinlein Society started, and it was the this guy, the William Patterson, who actually did the introduction to this version of it. Wrote the 2-volume biography, and that's I've got both volumes here. But he started the Journal of Heinlein Studies. I think that's what it's called. and then it went defunct when he died in 2014, and they started it again in 2019. So, like, I'm going, where's the Simak journal?
Yeah, I wish they do books like this for like Arthur C. Clarke, Asimov, Simak. I mean, we all could come up with a list because I love the photos in it. I love the book covers and the little blurbs. You can pick up a lot of information that, and I mean, Silverberg would be another one I would think, but you'd probably have to double the size because how much you publish. Well, Asimov, same thing, right?
Yeah, sure.
But Silverberg refuses to die, so I just.
and good on him. Good on him.
Oh, yeah.
But anyway, there's the like, I'll just go through the ones I've got here. The bio, which I haven't read yet because I'm holding off to reading more of his stories, or refresh my memory before I dig more into it. This is rather new. The Pleasant Profession of Robert A. Heinlein by Farah Mendelssohn. She is a historian critic, chaired Science Fiction Foundation, which is here in the UK, served as president of the International Association of the Fantastic in the Arts, been involved in both national and international conventions. I've only read just a few bits of it, and it's a bit strange because she keeps talking about certain things we'll get to in a minute as well regarding the short stories. And then the earlier one by Advent Publishing out of Chicago, published in 1968, Alexei Panshin's, which sent Heinlein through the roof. He didn't want anybody writing critically about him at all, even after his death.
Do they have a journal of Panshin studies? Otherwise,
no,
Heinlein,
he sort of did his own.
Yeah, Heinlein won then. If he until this guy gets his own journal, we don't.
That's funny.
Well, he died in 2023. In I think August 2023. Sadly, Alexei Panshin. And then we've got a series, Writers of the 21st Century, edited by Joseph D. Allender and Martin H. Greenberg. And this is the Heinlein one.
I have seen that one, yeah.
There's a whole series of them. And then we got this one here, Robert A. Heinlein, America as Science Fiction, H. Bruce Franklin. This has a few interesting things about the story I read. And then Grumbles. So those are the things that I have, but that's just a small tip or the base of the mountain of stuff that's on Heinlein.
Wow. Yeah. And then Simak has so little. So it's interesting, we've been reading Simak and they're strikingly different. Simak is so philosophical and Heinlein, I guess he's politically philosophical.
Yeah, but apparently in his Anson McDonald's ones, he gets a little more philosophical and definitely political in the one that I read. Did you want to talk about The Roads Were Roll, Mark, first, or?
Well, it's a reread. It was in all the early anthologies when I was growing up. I mean, not the yearly ones, but the big overarching. Well, I'm reading it in this. A lot of you will recognize this. It also has an Anson McDonald, the Bootstrap story in it, which was typical. Yeah. And the opening scene is you got the roads must roll. They have what sounds like a 1930s secret union meeting going on with the guys who keep the roads rolling, and it's guys. Then you have an executive who's got an Australian coming to see how America does it, and it looks like right now that you can step on a road and end up moving your way over to where you're going 100 miles an hour. I would not recommend that, but they do it. And so I'm revisiting it. So I'll leave it there and I'll finish it tonight. It's not a very long story.
It's sort of set in 1970-ish. I think it's supposed to be set in 1970. It's part of his future history stories. I think of the False Dawn, part or something like that. And it's there's the union leader, and then there's a coup sort of. There's a revolution in a sense. Again, that's why it's interesting with this one, with Red Mars, and there's the workers that take over, or part of some of them, but then the main guy doesn't want that, so he's trying to fight to get back the control of the roads. Yeah, they're just like big conveyor belts all across the U.S., and the Australian diplomat is coming to learn how they do it in the United States.
They put up windbreaks every so often because
Yeah,
they said if you stepped out on one too fast, you would lose your clothing, which could be a bit awkward.
yeah. And then so there's a battle, but it's the kind of thing where rather than the guys are fighting against tyranny in a sense in Red Planet, it's the tyranny takes over and squashes the rebels, and tries to set up a situation where there won't be somebody like that again. There'll be so many checks in place, so somebody can't do something and take over again like this and disrupt the economy of the United States. Even though these roads are dangerous, because they talk about that there was an accident in like 60 and 19, or no, not whatever year, there was an accident, and like thousands and thousands of people died from this. They shut the president shut everything down, but then the economy was tanking, so they opened it up again. And so they must keep the roads rolling.
I wonder what happened to make them realize they needed the air baffles. Somebody had a bad day.
Yeah.
And the story I read, but that came out in June 1941 in Astounding. The one I read, it's Anthony McDonald's Satisfaction. No, Solution Unsatisfactory. God, I don't know why I can't remember that title. He wrote it during the 40s, but it was published in May 1941. And basically, when it was published, it became out of date almost. Because it's set in 1943. They are doing research into atomic weapons for the war. United States isn't in the war yet. They're still helping England. And there's an escaped a woman who's a physicist from Germany that's escaping because she's Jewish, and she's basically based on a real I forget her name, Elise something, who was a physicist who helped develop the program for nuclear fission, and she helps there, but she's in the character in there. She's trying to find a medical cure for radiation. But as a side effect of all this, they create something called a radioactive dust that is extremely deadly. And there's discussion of whether they use it or not, because if they use it and stop the war, then everybody knows that it exists, and it's not going to be too long before they back engineer it in a sense and create it themselves. So if they do this, which they do, they drop it on Berlin, and millions die. The Germans finally capitulate, but then the Americans figure, okay, well, the main character realizes that it's going to be turned on them. Somebody's going to do this, so we've got to take control. So it's a Pax America type situation, or Americana Pax, I think it's called, where they give ultimatums to the world, basically surrender all your air, because the whole thing was airplanes. If they didn't have airplanes, they can't deliver the dust over cities. So they say you got to deliver all your airplanes to a few places. One is in a place in Kansas, and then they're in Wales, and then there's a place in Southeast Asia that they're going to get he keeps referring to the EU, and I kept thinking, but this is 1941. It's like EU to me is, or most people, is European Union, but no, it's the Eurasian Union.
Oh, nice.
Interesting.
So that was like, I finally got to that part, and I go, oh, okay, that makes sense. But yeah, so they're doing this. The Soviets sort of capitulate as well, but they have a sleeve. They have something up their sleeve. But the one thing I wanted to read, which is a little quote from here, and talking about Heinlein using colloquialisms and everything, like he sort of ends up like when the ultimatum is given, give us, you give us all your weapons, and they're going to eventually control the uranium stuff, or the mining and everything. But then, and then the character says, in other words, throw down your guns, boys. We got the drop on you. And that's, Heinlein using this, sort of old West style of colloquialism. And he started it right at the beginning, and this is like his fourth story. But anyway, the story goes on. I really love this story, even though it's totally out of date. But then, as I say, the Soviets capitulate. Stalin had already died, so there's a new regime. They capitulated, and they're bringing their planes to Kansas. But they've already figured out what the dust was. So if you veer off to Manhattan, bomb Manhattan with this, just put the dust on. So Manhattan's gone, and a few other places. Washington D.C. is gone before they stop all this, and then they sort of take over like the Americans. But then it ends basically with the president, the American president, dying. The vice president takes over, and he's an isolationist, and he wants to pull back and do nothing of this. But the main guy who worked this all out realizes you can't do that. Like, we're all dead if this happens. So the only solution is he takes over, and he becomes dictator basically, and creates a cadet or a police force for the world to make sure that there are planes always in the air with the dust on over countries, but they're not from that country. So you've got like Asian or Japanese flyers over America, American flyers over Japan. So if something happens, they will drop the dust.
Mutually assured destruction.
Yeah. And this is 1940 and 41 exactly. And they're saying it's a solution, but it's not a good solution. And I really loved that one.
Fascinating. We've got liminal spaces here with a nice comment.
Yeah. The Roads Must Roll was well written and a great read, but from his description of the Union leader at the end, you could tell what he thought of unions. Yeah. Yeah, I loved it as a story too. That's the thing, that's what I always remembered certain stories. I always remembered this Requiem, and the Green Hills of Earth.
Right.
You see, The Roads Must Roll fits into the future history. Green Hills of Earth does.
Gentlemen Be Seated is one.
Sorry?
Gentlemen Be Seated.
Yeah.
There's another. That one's there's some Union stuff in that one too. It's a really nice little story.
I don't think I read that one.
Yeah, it's just it's really short, but it's about a reporter who's there on the moon to just look around and report on how things are working in this construction project. But there's a Union guy there that they pay extra to help take him in to some tunnel, above board tunnel, going through airlocks and things. And then there's an explosion, and they get trapped in this little section of tunnel. And it's very good little story. But there's a little bit of Union stuff in that too.
Okay.
But I thought he was very pro worker in that one. I felt.
Yeah, well, and another one that's good. What is it? Explosion may happen, or something like that, or
Blow-ups happen.
yeah, blow-ups happen. That was a good one I remember because it's got to do with nuclear power and atomic bombs as well. So he was dealing with some pretty heavy stuff at the time.
Yeah.
And especially this one was very political, and it's like he knows like the character. It's told from the first person character who's the secretary of this politician, and he was chosen because he was a liberal politician. So there you get Heinlein right at the beginning. But he knows what's going on, and he realizes that if we make this step, what can you do for all of us to that don't get killed, like the whole earth? It's like it's like everybody is in danger, and he becomes a dictator at the end. But the main character is telling the story to sort of his thing to give a different perspective of what this politician is going to be remembered for.
Yeah.
And he's dying as well because he was sent with all the dust to England before they dropped it on Berlin. And the other thing too was that Heinlein put in, and it wasn't just they went there, dumped it on Berlin, was they gave them weeks or months to say, give up. Here's the evidence we have for what this stuff can do, and we'll use it if you don't give up. And they don't. So they do. But meanwhile, he's sitting on the cases of the dust for like a week, he says, and that's where he contracted a cancer from the radiation probably. And he's dying. So, but yeah, it's like I say, it's like everywhere that I look about it, it says that it's a dated story, like it's not important and stuff like this. But yeah, but it's so good. That's the thing. Others say it reads more like an essay than an actual short story, but I loved it.
Hopefully they had good airplanes. No mechanical problems at all.
No. Yeah. Good stuff.
So yeah. We've gone now over an hour, but so are we everybody reading The Menace from Earth?
Still waiting for my copy.
Definitely.
Yep.
I'm in.
Yep. This is great. Really enjoyed this, Sean and Mark and everybody. Randy, Pat, thank you.
Yeah. And thank you for letting me join you guys. I really enjoyed this as well.
Oh, Liminal Spaces says you'll check out the one that you were talking about, Mark. I think Scott.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
So like I say, this is short stories. The Year of the Jackpot, and I'm curious to see what that is because I don't know if I've ever read that, because there's a William Gibson stories. It's about the jackpot. It's a period of time that's coming up in the future where a lot of disasters happen all at once, and they call it the jackpot, where it destroys the earth basically.
Wow.
So I'm curious to see if that's any relation. But and by his bootstraps, Columbus was a dope. The metaphor. He was actually right, but hey, Skylift, Goldfish Bowl, Project Nightmare, water is for washing.
Good advice for everyone.
Yeah.
Very good. Yeah.
So yeah. So everybody, I will leave a link to the article, and also too, we didn't really talk about anything. There was a 1991, I think, animated film or series, 3-part series that was done for the Red Planet. They really dumbed it down. They made it not for juveniles so much for children, I think. Really changed the ending. Frank disappears. It's his sister that goes to the college with him, and he loses the merit points for having a girl in his room. And then he says, "Well, she's my sister."
Oh my God.
And then she loses demerit points basically for having a boy.
Yeah. It's funny. It's funny those decisions they make when they want to make something as video.
Yeah.
I never understand.
Instead of Willis being just a recorder, a little round video screen pops up over his head.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah, that's silly. Oh boy.
So, but yeah, it was kind of fun to watch, but in a cringy way. But if you were 7 or 8, it would have been great.
Very good. Very good.
Okay.
Cool.
Bye, everybody. We'll
Thanks,
be back.
everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Take care, all.
Thanks, everybody. It was great to see y'all.
You too.
Bye.
Yep.